Hey, what's going on guys? It's FPL Yusuf and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be coming with a video of reviewing some of your guys' drafts. So I've asked on my Twitter account and for my Instagram as well, just for some different draft types. Some will have Salah, some with Haaland, some with both, and I've done one myself with neither. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so welcome back guys. Thank you for joining me for another video today. Before we get into this, if you wouldn't mind just dropping a thumbs up and subscribing down below, it'd be greatly appreciated. So today we're going to get into looking at some different draft types from all around the community. I think we're about 2 weeks out now before the deadline starts. So I just kind of wanted to get a rough idea of like where people's heads were at, kind of what type of players were they looking at going for. Were they going to prioritize going for premiums, or were they going to look elsewhere? So the range of drafts that we've got today are going to be quite vast. What I'll do is I'm going to leave a link to everyone who sent a draft in for me to use, both on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave like a little logo on the screen so you can see their at, and I'll also drop their link in the description if you want to go check these guys out, because some of them have been really helpful to me. So I just want to say before I get into the video, thank you so much to all the guys who have sent me drafts for this video. It's much appreciated. Okay, so let's start off with the first one. As you guys can see on screen, this is going to be coming from FPL Aguero on Twitter. Now, his team is currently lined up in a 3-4-3 with a few picks you'd expect to see, but also some that you wouldn't. So let's start off with his goalkeeper. So Sells in goal, up first for Nottingham Forest against Bournemouth at home. I think this is probably the biggest point of this draft that maybe I look at with concern, and that's because Forest have obviously signed another keeper in Miguel. So technically, they have 3 number 1 choices. At the time of recording, I would assume that Miguel is going to be their number 1 choice. So I think that for me is just the only thing I can look at from this whole draft and say, right, that's the biggest problem, is just the goalkeeper. So I think just that one there, I'm not sure if he's going to play. Onto his defense, Trent Alexander-Arnold, first name up, and I love to see it. I've spoken about in previous videos. He's someone that I desperately want in my team. And the fact that, FPL Aguero has gone for him, I've got a lot of respect for that pick. So couples up with Munoz and Mykolenko, both from Crystal Palace and Everton respectively. Now, Munoz is another player that I've spoken about. I do think that Crystal Palace are going to have a good season, and I do expect him to have a good season too. Playing at that right wing back spot, he's going to be bombing up and down that right hand side. So you'd expect, hopefully, that his expected goal involvement will be quite high. Mykolenko, I think, is just a nice overall pick. I think around that 4.5 million sort of mark is someone who you want to have to be able to play games, but also you want to be able to rotate them out. And obviously on the bench, he's got Barco and Dunk, both from Brighton. Coming in at 4.5 million, you've got a different couple of choices there. You've got Konsa, you could go for Dan Burn, Livramento. There's a few players that you could sort of pick up at that price range. So yeah, for me, I think overall solid backline. Maybe the only problem that I see with it is just the goalkeeper. Maybe you could look at another 4.5 million defender instead of Dunk, just because he's got Barco to cover the Brighton defense. But overall, pretty solid, to be fair. Now onto the midfield, and I must say, I love this midfield. Now, there is no Salah, as you guys can see, which, is obviously a big question around, the community at the moment, is whether you go for Salah, whether you go for Haaland, do you pick both, or do you go, is there a way that you go for none? So FPL Aguero hasn't gone for Salah. Now, he's gone for Son, and I think this is one player that I have not heard spoken enough about in this preseason. I think because of the way all the other midfielders are priced this season, Saka, Palmer, Foden, there's a lot more choice around that sort of premium bracket of midfielder than maybe there was last season. I think I believe Son was actually priced at 10 million last year, or at least very close to where he is. So it shouldn't be a surprise to us that he's coming in at that price. But he has started preseason exceptionally well. He got a brace in his last game, and he's looking very good. And I think it's something that at time of recording, his percentage of ownership is only about 8%, which is a major differential, which going into the season at a player at that price point, I don't think you would really say that there should be differentials at that price, but he is, because I think a lot of people are starting to look elsewhere, at the likes of Salah, Palmer, Saka. There's options around that. And if you own both Salah and Haaland, you probably won't be able to get to the likes of Son and Saka, just because your budget's going to be taken up. So I really do like that pick from FPL Aguero. Now, moving on to the Arsenal cover, and he has got Martin Odegaard in there. And now this is one player that, at the time of recording, in my current draft, I've actually put him back in. Now, I didn't have Odegaard to start off. I was thinking, Saka, the guy on penalties, you kind of know what you get. I think after watching Arsenal play Liverpool in the preseason, just showed me that Arsenal don't really have a replacement for Saka. So without him, I think they really do lack on that right-hand side, which is why I expect him to do quite well this season. However, fun facts about Martin Odegaard is he was second for most double-digit hauls last season with nine different double-digit hauls, which for me, I think goes, again, same as Son, a little bit under the radar. I think if you're trying to find a way to save budget, the gap between Odegaard and Saka, it's a 1.5 million saving, and I don't think there's a massive amount in it. I think Odegaard has, probably more of an assist threat, where Saka may be more of a goal threat. But if you combine both of them, I would say Odegaard's probably more in line to be able to get you a goal and assist, maybe more so than Saka is. Obviously Saka is Arsenal's main penalty taker, but we have seen Odegaard take penalties before for Arsenal, but he actually hasn't missed either. So obviously Saka is their main penalty taker, but we have seen him delegate penalties to Odegaard, especially last season. So I do really like that pickup of Martin Odegaard in the midfield. Now on to the next two. Again, another player that I spoke about in one of my other videos that I don't see being talked about a lot is Dominik Szoboszlai. Again, he's only about 3% owned at the time of recording. So again, a major differential coming in at 6.5 million. Now, like I said, if Liverpool end up lining up with a 4-2-3-1 and he is the number 10, I think that is huge for FPL, and especially in the midfield price, because around that sort of £6.5 million price tag, obviously everyone's looking at Nkunku as the main one, but I think Szoboszlai, there's definitely a case to be made for him. If he does start, there's free kicks there, there's corners, there's set pieces. I think he's definitely one to watch out for. So I do like this pickup as well. And there's a few differentials in this team actually, which I really am a big advocate for. And the last midfielder that we've got on this list is Eze. Again, kind of goes without saying, he's more of a highly owned pick, but I think with the way Crystal Palace have been playing at the moment, and the fact that I don't know if Mateta is going to be back, I think all of Crystal Palace's attacking threat is kind of going to be hoisted on Eze to try and carry through. Obviously, if Mateta's not there, then we know he'll definitely be on penalties. He'll probably be on most set pieces as well. So at 7 million, I think you just can't go wrong. And his last midfielder on this is just Morgan Rogers, coming in at 5 million. I think, we've spoken a lot about him through pre-season. We probably heard a lot about him as well. I think he's a good player to have, someone that you can sort of interchange with. If you want to play a back four, he can hold the bench. If you want to play a back three and maybe a 3-5-2, he can come in. So you've got room for rotation there. So yeah, that is his midfield. On to his front three, which this seems to be the kind of, I don't want to say template, because I don't really know if there's a template sort of thing this year, but at least in my team, this is the exact same front three, and there's another draft in this video that's going to have this. It's Haaland, Isak, and Muniz. Now, Isak goes without saying, he just has to be in there. The fixtures, the price, his ownership, there's so many reasons why you just need him. Muniz at 6 million, again, Fulham have got a good start to the season, so I do expect him to sort of start ticking over quite quickly. Haaland, on the other hand, goes down to what your budget is. We have actually heard from Pep that he's suffering with a few niggles, which I don't know how concerning that is. I think as sort of preseason goes on, we get to the Community Shield, then we'll see how actually fit and ready he is. But I think if Haaland is good to go, then I think he has to be the first name on the team sheet. Okay, so on to our second draft now, and this is coming from Ben Roberts on Twitter. Now, he's actually gone for a fullback, which is something that you don't maybe see as much in FPL. Most people sort of prioritize the attack and the midfield and go 3 at the back. Ben's actually gone for 4. So let's get on to his goalkeepers first. Now, he's got the double up on West Ham, either Areola or Fabianski. It's a safe bet. It's like if one doesn't play, the other one will play. So I do like that. It sort of covers both bases, because there were times it's last season that we were wondering, would it be Areola? Would it be Fabianski? West Ham went through such a long time last year. If you owned any West Ham defense, you'll know from game week 5 to game week 22, 23, they didn't keep a clean sheet, and it was so frustrating because they had such good fixtures. So I think, covering both bases on goalkeepers is always a good idea, especially if they're coming in at 4 and 4.5 million. It's kind of the rough estimate of kind of what you'd want to spend on goalkeepers anyway. So I do like that. So onto his defense. Now, he's got a few differentials in here, which maybe, we haven't seen on a lot of different drafts. So we're going to start with the Arsenal. He's got the Arsenal cover in there in Ben White, and Ben White is a pick that I like. I know he's priced at 6.5, but I do think he's worth every penny, and I do think you will see him rack up with double-digit hauls this year. Arsenal's clean sheet record is the best in the league, so it's always just a safe bet to go with an Arsenal defender in there. Obviously, this season they've been priced up quite high, but I think over the course of the season you'll definitely get your money's worth. Now, Pedro Porro is someone that over the last sort of 2-3 days, I've kind of gone from not even thinking about at all to he has to be in my starting 11. Now, he's coming in at 5.5, and I thought maybe at the start of the season it was a little bit expensive. I've talked about this before, about the bonus points. Every time you concede, they're going to lose 4 bonus points, and would Porro be able to make it up with the attacking threat? However, after watching a few Spurs games in pre-seasons, this guy is playing like right wing, number 10. He's just free roaming. Now, don't get me wrong, there is opportunities for him to get caught out at the back. And that is my biggest concern, is that I don't trust Spurs' defence to be able to defend with missing a man. And where he goes forward so much, there's always that chance that there's going to be a gap down his side. However, the fact that he's on corners, he's on set pieces, and just how attacking he is, I've kind of changed my opinion of him to the fact that I feel like he has to be there. So yeah, my current draft right now, I've actually got him in my team. So I do like this one from Ben. He's got two attacking fullbacks to start off with Ben White and Pedro Porro. A little bit on the premium side, but I think both over the course of the season probably could return you the value. So on to the next one, and it is Ian Maatsen from Aston Villa. Now, other than Ezri Konsa, I haven't really seen many people go with Aston Villa defenders, and I'm not too sure why, because they actually do have quite a good start to the season. I think the biggest issue around Maatsen was the fact that there's Digne and there's and there's Alex Moreno too. I think that was the biggest cause of concern, is that there's two starting left backs there. You've had Maatsen there for a big fee. Surely he has to play, and for me, I do like the pick. I think if he's guaranteed a start, I think he'll be good value for money. He had a great season with Dortmund last year, making it all the way through to the Champions League final. A little bit unfortunate in that, but I think at price at 5 million with the Aston Villa defense, I think he could be terrific value for money actually over the course of the season. And the two 4.5 million defenders he has is Mykolenko and Muriello. Again, you'll probably see a few different types of combinations with the 4.5s. You can't go wrong with them, really. There's a few of them on there that just rotate nicely with each other. And I think Mykolenko and Muriello are one of those pairings that, just when one has a bad fixture, the other one has either a decent or a good fixture. So yeah, £4.5 million is a good rotating little pair there. So onto the midfield now, and he's gone for a completely different midfield. Now, we just touched on Szoboszlai in the last draft. Again, I love that pick, and maybe now I'm starting to see a few more people sort of pick him up versus maybe a couple of days ago when I made that video on the midfielders. But yeah, I'd like Dominik Szoboszlai in there, coming in at 6.5 million. Anthony Gordon is another one, which actually, from what I've seen on Twitter and through a lot of the community drafts, I don't know how actually guaranteed he is in a lot of people's drafts, and I can't understand why. I think 7.5 million. At that price point, for me, he's just worth every penny. He had such a fantastic season last year. And I did touch on this before. I know his away record wasn't great, but that's not going to be sustainable. Eventually he's going to start scoring points away from home. When he was at St. James's Park, he was electric. And I think away from home was obviously always the downfall with him, but surely at some point that is going to swing, and he will start returning points. I think why he's coming in at this sort of price, I think he's kind of a no-brainer really. So yeah, I do like this one from Ben. And his final midfielder is someone who there's been a lot of debate around, and that is Cole Palmer. Now, obviously, Nkunku's pricing at 6.5, Palmer's in at 10.5, so there's a 4 million gap between them both. And the big question that is on everyone's lips about these two is that 4 million worth it for Palmer? I think you have to look at them quite differently. Chelsea, Palmer will be their main penalty taker, regardless. I know Nkunku can take him, and he is a good player, but I think Palmer will be that set penalty taker. And I think just having that routes to point for a player, I think it's just so important, because there's going to be games where you go through and you might not be playing well, but all it takes is just a little penalty, he scores it, and all of a sudden he finds himself into the bonus point. So I think for the difference, it's a big difference. Don't get me wrong, the money between them both is massive, but I wouldn't be mad if someone said that they were going to go for Cole Palmer over Nkunku, because I think Chelsea look like a different team when he's there. When he's there, he just kind of makes everything tick along nicely. And B, the penalties, the route to points, and especially with him, he's almost such a certainty. It's like you kind of want to have that one player in there that that even if he's having a bad game, there's always a chance that he could get back on that score sheet. Actually brings me on nicely to his front three, and one player that I'm going to touch on just kind of the same as Cole Palmer. And to Ben out there, if you are watching this video, I love this pick in Ivan Toney. He is someone that I think has gone, everyone's just forgotten about him. And I don't know if it's because, that you've got Watkins, Haaland, Isak, all up there, Havertz even maybe from Arsenal, Nunez and Chris Wood as maybe cheaper options. And Toney in at 7.5 has kind of been drowned out a little bit. But there's been links that he might be moving away. Whether he stays or he goes, I think he's just a good FPL asset. He's a good striker, but he's also a certainty from penalty spots. And like I was saying about Cole Palmer, when you've got someone who's that much of a certainty, I think it's just such a good route to points. And like I said, it just brings him into the bonus points. And especially with the way the BPS works this year with shots on target as well, it's just something else that goes in towards Toney's favour as being a good FPL asset. Now, like I said, I haven't seen anyone with him in the draft. The rest of these drafts haven't got him. I haven't seen anyone on Twitter with him. So I love the fact that Ben's actually got him in his team. So yeah, for me, Ivan Toney, great pickup. Isak and Haaland kind of goes without saying. So we'll leave them there now, and we'll move on to the next draft. Okay, next up, the third draft in this, and this is one that has both Haaland and Salah. Now, we're going to touch on, as we go through this, why people are asking the question, is there a way that you could do a draft without them? Because you'll see what happens with the budget as we go through this. And this is from Claire FPL on Twitter. So she's gone with Jordan Pickford in goal. Now, I think it's probably a safe pair of hands. You could probably save yourself 0.5 million if you wanted to downgrade the keeper to a 4.5. But Jordan Pickford, second most clean sheets last year. I don't expect much to change from Everton, to be honest with you. I think they've got a solid defence. If they keep a hold of Branthwaite, it's just only going to add to that help in that back line. So yeah, for me, Pickford, solid goalkeeper coming in at 5 million. Now, we'll move on to the defence. And this is where you can start to see what happens when you have a Haaland and Salah draft. So as we've seen in the previous ones, they haven't gone with Mo Salah. or they haven't gone for Haaland, and like there's budget to be spared. And what happens is you end up getting, 6 million defenders, 6.5 million defenders, 5.5 million defenders, 5 million defenders. Whereas in this draft, as you can see, Gvardiol's in there as the premium. And I think if there's any City defender you're going to go for, make it him for two reasons. Number one, I think he's probably the most nailed defender now in that City back line to start. But two, he has the attacking threat. Now, City have been notorious for obviously, scoring 4 or 5 goals, but always conceding one. I think when you've got someone like Gvardiol who can cover you on that with the possibility of assist threat, I think you just have to take it, because City will keep clean sheets throughout the season. But if you've got someone who can add to that chance of returning points with an attacking goal or an attacking assist, I think you just have to put them in there and pay that little bit of premium. I think he's worth it over the course of the season. But the rest of the defense, as you can see, are all 4.5s. Now, obviously, that is one thing that you're going to have to sacrifice if you are going for a Haaland and Salah draft. So she's gone with Anderson from Crystal Palace. Great pickup. There's a lot of debate between either him or Guehi. I think Anderson just has that little bit more attacking threat through goals and through assists. Ezri Konsa, we've touched on him in the video so far about Aston Villa's defence. He's a great piece at 4.5 that you can sort of rotate with. Now, she's also got someone that I haven't seen on here yet, and that's Mickey van der Ven. For me personally on this one, that's the one thing I said I would rate these drafts. Honestly, I think I personally would kind of look elsewhere at that sort of price bracket for a £4.5 million defender, only because Van der Ven's attacking threat is basically non-existent. I think it was like something like 0.08. So you're really not expecting much. I know he actually, ironically, did get a couple of goals last season, but he's not someone that I don't think is going to pop up regularly with them. With the amount of sheer choice at that sort of price bracket, I think that's probably the only thing I could maybe critique about this defense, is looking elsewhere at a different player at that price point. But overall, it's a solid defense. Like I said, with the Salah and Haaland budget taken up, you're going to have to look elsewhere at these cheaper options. And I think all of them so far are all viable picks. So we're going to move on to the midfield now. We've touched on two of them already in Odegaard and Salah, so we won't go over them. Now we'll move on to Nkunku. Now, we literally touched on him on the last draft about was he worth the 4 million difference between him and Palmer? Is it worth to save the money and go Nkunku, or should you pay the extra premium and maybe go for a Palmer? I think it depends on where Nkunku plays. Now, if Nkunku starts up top or like in the number 10 role, I think at £6.5 million, he might be, along with Isak, the most underpriced player this season. Now, he's actually started off really well in preseason, despite the fact that Chelsea as a team haven't. He's been returning goals, and I think it's significant, because the key for him is just staying fit. I think last season we lost him for most of it, and it was a little bit disappointing actually, because there were such high hopes when he came to Chelsea from Leipzig, after the season he had, and we were all thinking, okay, we've got ourselves a player here now. So I think if he can stay fit, and he can keep continuing with the attacking returns, because like I said, Chelsea obviously have the difficult fixture against game week 1 against Man City, but from game week 2 on paper, maybe not defensively, but going forward, they should be scoring goals. I actually haven't seen a draft that has both Palmer and Nkunku, and I think maybe that could be quite telling as to why, because maybe I think a lot of people are uncertain about how consistent Chelsea will be. But I think at £6.5 million, I think, as I said, Nkunku could be one of the, if not the most underpriced player this season. So yeah, definitely a great pickup at that price point. And the last midfielder that we haven't seen yet is Callum Hudson-Odoi. He was someone who was in my original first draft. I think at £5.5 million, Forest have got a good start to the season. I think Hudson-Odoi on that left-hand side, I think could have a decent season this year with them. I think we saw glimpses of it last year where, he cuts inside on his right foot and sends it into the far corner, and he's so good at doing that. I think it was just, the problem with him was just consistency and just seeing it on a more regular basis. But I think at £5.5 million, if you're trying to save budget to bring certain other premiums in, I think he's a fantastic pick, and especially with the start to the season they have, I think Hudson-Odoi for me would be, at that price point, probably the first name on the team sheet. Obviously, our front line from Claire is the same as what we've covered, so we won't really go too much into it. It's Muniz, Isak, and Haaland. Like I said, it's becoming kind of the most frequent one that I'm seeing at the moment. Obviously, Haaland there for the premium. Isak goes in there just because you can't not go without him. And I think a lot of people have just kind of come to the conclusion that at that 6 million price bracket, Muniz is probably the best option for that. Okay, on to our fourth draft, and this is from one of my friends, actually, Michael. If you're watching this, Michael, shout out to you. So he's giving me a draft today with a few differentials in here, as you guys can see on screen. So we'll start off with his goalkeeper choice in Flekken. Now, I think I've touched on this a few videos back around Brentford defensively as a whole, and I do expect them to be a lot better than they were last season. I think the underlying numbers last season wasn't actually that bad. There were just moments where they were just conceding just like really low XG chances, and I think that won't continue to happen. So I think eventually Brentford will start turning over clean sheets. So when you're looking around the sort of £4.5 million price range for goalkeepers, I think, which is where most people will be at, I think he's a very good, solid option. You know, he had a few games last season where he come back with double-digit hauls. I remember one against Man City where he was just making save after save. So he's got that potential in his locker. I think just Brentford as a whole, you know, obviously bringing Rico Henry back is going to just make him that much stronger. So yeah, I do expect more clean sheets from Brentford this season. He's also got Dean Henderson on the bench, which I think a lot of people are expecting Crystal Palace to start with. So if you did want to save a 0.5 million there, you know, you could downgrade one of them, or you could have it as rotating goalkeepers, which I know is another quite a fun tactic in FPL when you've got two players around the sort of 4.5 million bracket. You want to have both of them who kind of contrast fixtures with each other. So I think, yeah, I do like this rotating choice, and you know, Palace and Brentford do rotate quite well together. Onto his defense now. Again, we've touched on a few of the players here. You know, Joachim Andersen, Mikalenko, Konsa. Luke Shaw is the one that interested me, and I was very surprised when I saw this one, but I didn't mind it actually, to be honest with you. Man United, I think, are one of those teams that never get their flowers for the defensive side of things. I think a lot of people just sort of jump on the wave of Ten Hag isn't good enough. But I do actually expect Man United to keep a lot more clean sheets than most teams this season. You know, I think they were unlucky through preseason where they've lost Euro. It's looking like for a couple of months actually, which is a little bit disappointing. But you know, Lisandro Martinez is back now. Will it help their defense? I'm not sure. I think, you know, Luke Shaw just being back, him in particular, I think will definitely help them going forward, but also defensively too. Is he a little bit overpriced on FPL this year? And could you look for value elsewhere? Possibly, but like I said, I do think Man United do kind of fly under the radar a little bit with their defensive side of things. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but I'm not mad at either. I do like that pickup. So onto the midfield now. Again, we've covered sort of three of these guys already. Leon Bailey is the one that I want to look at, and then we've got a little differential in there as well to come to after. Now, Leon Bailey is someone that I'm expecting to actually sort of kick on this season and actually do quite well. You know, with Moussa Diaby leaving, I think that there's a gap to be filled for someone to step up alongside Ollie Watkins. And I think for Leon Bailey, providing he gets the minutes, I think he can be that guy. I think right now, 6.5 million, I think he's actually fairly priced as well. You know, a lot of people been sort of comparing him to Morgan Rogers. I think you have to look at them differently because they are from different price points. It's like looking at Odegaard and Saka differently, again, because they're from different price points. I think Leon Bailey, you know, offers probably a more stronger route to points than maybe Morgan Rogers does, but also I think he offers more minutes. I don't think it's by a lot, but I think he does offer that certainty of like, he's a first teamer. Morgan Rogers is borderline first teamer. You know, obviously they've just signed Samuel Illing Jr. as well, which plays on that left-hand side with Morgan Rogers, whereas Bailey can sort of play on the right, play on the left, could play up front if you need him to. So yeah, for me, I think Leon Bailey's one to watch out for this year. I think not a lot of people have been talking enough about him and the potential that he could have this season. And finally, this has got to be the biggest differential I've got in this video, and that is Mavividi from Leicester. Now, I think a lot of people are wary about Leicester, about how they're going to perform. You know, usually when promoted teams come up, it's never usually a fantastic season. However, with this guy in particular, he almost has like this just rawness about him that I feel like he can just score a goal from nothing. I think sometimes when you're playing for a promoted side, that's the type of player that you need. You know, he's cheap. He's 5.5 million. So you're not expecting him to get you 20 goals, 20 assists. But I think he's a nice piece to have in there that you could rotate him out for the harder games, but just bring him back in when, you know, Leicester have got players, or when Leicester have fixtures, around their sort of level. I think he could definitely be someone who turns up. So yeah, I do like it. When I saw him in there, I was loving it, because if you guys know me and you've been following my channel for a while now, then you know I love a good differential. So yeah, seeing Mavividi in there with his such low ownership, it was one that I had to cover. Yeah, the front three of Haaland, Isak, and Muniz seems to be like the staple front three now of the community, where, you know, Haaland and Isak kind of just play every game. Muniz is there. We'll probably play most games, but there are some games that maybe you want to take him out for if it's against City, against Arsenal, someone like that. But, you know, at 6 million offers great value for what you're getting from him. So yeah, I think that front three there is going to be one that we see a lot going over the course of the next few weeks. Okay, finally, a no Salah, no Haaland draft. Now, this is one that I have made. And I was looking to see how the squad would look overall if you didn't have Haaland and Salah in there. And as you guys can see on screen, the money does spread and you can sort of get good cover in most positions. I think the only downside to this formation, to this setup without them, is you lose that obvious captaincy choice in one of them. But if you're willing to be able to look past that, I think that this setup could be quite a nice one going forward. So I've got the Arsenal covering goal in David Raya. He would just be my set and forget. Cheapest way into the Arsenal defence. Like I said, I think you have to own an Arsenal defender just because of how good they are defensively, and almost a guarantee that they'll get you clean sheets over the course of the season. I think it's just a smart move to have. So yeah, David Raya was the cheapest way in there for me. So I've just got to put him in goal, and he will just be my set and forget keeper. Now the back three, Gvardiol, Trent, and Pedro Porro. Three defenders there that you'd expect to get some sort of clean sheets from all three of them at some point of the season. But I think the more telling thing about these three in particular is the attacking threat that they pose. You know, each one of them in their own right is quite attacking for their own teams. You know, Pedro Porro on set pieces for Spurs, and like I said, just bombs up that right hand side. Trent again, the best at attacking for fullbacks in world football. You know, can take free kicks, corners, all of it. Gvardiol, not so much on the set pieces, but I think does play a crucial role in how City attack down that left hand side, and ends up getting himself into quite good goal scoring positions actually, and goal assisting positions. So that back three for me is as much about offense as it is about defense. And ironically, you'd maybe even argue the question that you could actually expect more attacking returns than defensive ones. But you know, when you've got players who can provide both, I think you're always in good hands. So the five across midfield. Now I've gone for Son, Saka, Odegaard, Eze, and Gordon. Now you've got penalty takers in here, you've got set piece takers in here, you've got players from all different price ranges in here. But this is what happens when you don't have Haaland and Salah. You can afford to stack your midfield with five players who are A, going to play. They're going to play 90 minutes most games. B, are all on, like I said, there's some on set pieces. Two of them, three of them maybe even are on penalties. You know, there's different routes to points with these players. And this is what I liked about having no Haaland and no Salah, is that you could afford to cover all the midfield. So you wouldn't have like a 5.5 million. You wouldn't have a £6 million midfielder, a £4.5 million midfielder. You've got five bona fide starters who are going to play and who are going to probably get attacking returns over the course of the season. So yeah, for me, it's a question that needs to be asked. You know, is it worth... Is having the Salah and Haaland worth it? And like I touched on earlier, about the one thing you lose is obvious captaincies, but you know, Son in his own right, Saka, maybe you could even ask the question about Odegaard and Gordon on particular occasions. You have got other players who could be captaincy options. Obviously, they wouldn't be maybe as good or as consistent as, you know, Salah and Haaland, which is why they're priced they are the way they are. But I think overall, I think it just gives you such a good balance to the midfield. And finally, the two up front, one is the obvious one in Alexander Isak. Now, I've gone for Joshua Zirkzee in here. And the reason why I've done that is because we've actually just found out that Rasmus Højlund is going to be out for about 6 weeks with a hamstring injury. So he is not going to be playing. We found out Marcus Rashford is going to be injured as well. So it's not even that they can put him up front there. So I think Manchester United don't really have another choice other than to put Zirkzee up front. Now, I don't know whether that would have been their plan anyway, just to get him up front, or whether they would have eased him into life in the Premier League. But I don't think now that they really have too much of a choice. And I do think, I don't know what I expected Manchester United this season, but I do think that there could be returns from certain players there, you know, whether it would be Luke Shaw, as we were talking about earlier, with, you know, some maybe more on the defensive side of things, or maybe Zirkzee surprised a lot of us and just actually takes the Premier League by storm and, you know, racks up, I think, a good season for him, anywhere between 10 and 15 goals. I think you'd say that's a pretty successful campaign for someone who's just moved to the Premier League. So yeah, me personally, I've got him in there just as a little bit of a differential, but also because I think he will start the first sort of 5-6 game weeks of the season. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a thumbs up and subscribe down below. I just want to say a quick thank you to all the guys who sent me their teams in on Twitter and through Instagram. You guys are the best, and thank you so much. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video of me kind of critiquing the teams. And like I said, I might do one more of these before the season starts. So again, you know, maybe in like a week's time, a week's and a half time, as we draw closer and people start to sort of lock in their teams and sort of cement their final picks, I might go over one more time just to see where the community's at. Because I think as time goes closer and closer to the deadline, we'll see more and more of, not template players, but you'll see more of kind of the same sorts. You know, we saw from this video here that the front three of Muniz, Isak, and Haaland seems to be, you know, kind of a go-to. So I think we'll start to see that from other positions as well. So yeah, if you guys want to see that video, just let me know. Drop a thumbs up and, you know, drop a comment down below. But yeah, like I said, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. I'll be back with a FPL challenge video, hopefully this weekend, maybe Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon, one of the two. I actually need to record it first, but yeah, I'm going to do a video on that for anyone out there who wants to play FPL challenge. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.